Before she became a name spoken in whispers in classrooms, courtrooms, and hospital wards, before her story traveled across borders and languages, before survival became her legacy, Alison Botha was simply living. Not surviving, not fighting, just living. She woke up to ordinary mornings, she worked a job that paid the bills, she laughed with friends, she made plans that extended no further than the next weekend. Her thoughts were filled with the kinds of concerns most young adults carry: careers, independence, the quiet hope that tomorrow would be better than today. There was nothing extraordinary about her life, and that is exactly why it matters. Because history does not only happen to heroes, sometimes it chooses ordinary people. South Africa in 1994 stood at a crossroads. The world called it freedom. The people felt something more complicated. Apartheid had ended, but endings do not erase scars overnight. The nation was learning how to breathe again, how to trust, how to hope, how to exist without the structures that once controlled every movement. There was celebration, yes, but also uncertainty, fear, a sense that the rules were being rewritten in real time. For women, this moment carried a quiet tension. Independence had finally become possible in ways it hadn't been before. Women were working, traveling, living on their own. Freedom meant choices. Freedom meant movement. But freedom also meant exposure. The risks were rarely spoken out loud. They lived in instincts, in habits, in the way keys were held between fingers at night, in the unspoken rules women learned without being taught. Alison lived in this space, hopeful, independent, unaware of how thin the line between safety and danger could be. December 18th did not announce itself. There was no warning in the air, no sense of impending disaster, no feeling that the clock was counting down. It began like countless other days had before it. A plan made casually, a friend, a short drive through streets she recognized. Familiarity is comforting. It tells us we are safe. It convinces us that danger belongs somewhere else, to other people, other places, other stories. Alison had no reason to believe this night would be different. That is how moments that change everything usually arrive, quietly. There are moments in life that split time in two: a before, where the world makes sense, and after, where nothing ever feels the same. Alison's moment came without permission. Control was not taken violently at first. It was taken strategically, through deception, through intimidation, through the sudden realization that choices were being stripped away one by one. Strangers stepped into her reality, and in seconds, her autonomy vanished. Fear does not always scream. Sometimes it goes silent. From that point forward, the night belonged to someone else. What followed was prolonged, disorienting, overwhelming beyond language. Time no longer behaved normally. Minutes stretched, thoughts fragmented. The body reacted while the mind struggled to keep pace. This part of the story is often summarized, reduced, condensed. But it matters to say this clearly. Endurance is not passive. Every moment required resistance, even when resistance could not look like fighting. Even when survival meant something as small as staying present, staying conscious, staying human. Pain does not arrive with instructions. Fear does not explain itself. And in those moments, the mind becomes both enemy and ally. Yet Alison remained. Eventually, the night released her, not into safety, not into rescue, but into isolation. She was alone, severely injured, believed to be beyond help. This is the point where most stories end. This is where statistics take over, where probability makes its prediction, where survival is no longer expected. The body had every reason to surrender, but something else intervened. Survival is often described as instinct, but sometimes it is a decision. Alison's mind reached a conclusion her body had not yet accepted. She would not die here. Not because she felt strong, not because she felt brave, but because surrender was not an option she was willing to take. This was not heroism, it was desperation shaped into resolve. She focused on consciousness, on movement, on the smallest possible goal: light. A distant streetlight became more than illumination. It became direction, purpose, proof that the world had not ended. Each movement was slow, painful, measured. Time collapsed into moments. Survival in that space did not look triumphant. It looked stubborn. Every step carried risk. Every pause threatened finality. But Alison moved, not quickly, not gracefully, but deliberately. When help finally arrived, disbelief followed. Medical professionals would later describe her condition as impossible. The injuries told one story, her presence told another. She was still breathing, still conscious, still here. Alive, not because the night spared her, but because she refused to disappear inside it. Rescue did not end the ordeal, it transformed it. Hospitals replaced streets, surgeons replaced strangers, machines replaced silence. Recovery did not begin with certainty or optimism. It began with questions. Would she survive the night, the surgery, the next hour? Each day arrived without guarantees, but Alison stayed. And staying, sometimes, is the hardest part. Survival did not arrive all at once. It arrived in fragments, in beeping machines, in gloved hands moving with urgency, in voices speaking above her, calm, measured, but heavy with disbelief. Alison's body had crossed a line medicine rarely sees. She was alive, but only just. Every system was compromised. Blood loss, trauma, damage that should have ended everything hours earlier. Doctors did not speak in promises, they spoke in probabilities, and the probabilities were not kind. Surgery began almost immediately, then another and another. Each procedure was not a step forward, but a negotiation with time. Surgeons worked knowing that success did not guarantee survival, and survival did not guarantee recovery. The body, even when alive, remembers what it has endured. Pain is not something you wake up into gently. It arrives fully formed, demanding attention. Even through medication, even through fog, the body speaks, and it does not speak kindly. Alison drifted in and out of consciousness. Memory came in flashes, disconnected, incomplete. Faces appeared without names. Time dissolved. Nights and days lost their meaning. There was no triumphant awakening, there was only continuation. As consciousness returned, so did awareness, and awareness brought fear. Hospitals are places of healing, but they are also places where reality becomes unavoidable. Tubes, dressings, mirrors that tell truths before the mind is ready to hear them. The realization did not arrive as a single moment. It came slowly, like dawn breaking through fog. Something had happened, something irreversible. Questions formed before answers did. Where am I? Why can't I move? Why does my body feel unfamiliar? The mind seeks order. Trauma offers none. There is a moment many survivors describe, but few understand. The moment where survival stops feeling like a victory. Pain lingered. Fear settled in quietly. Sleep brought no rest, only images the mind replayed without consent. The body reacted before thought. Sounds startled, shadows felt threatening. This was not weakness, this was the nervous system doing its best to protect what remained. But protection can feel like imprisonment. Alison faced a new reality,
one where safety no longer felt automatic, where trust had to be relearned, where the world seemed sharper, louder, less forgiving. And yet, she stayed. Outside the hospital walls, the world continued. The legal system began its process, slow, methodical, unemotional. Evidence was collected, statements taken, investigations unfolded. Alison was not required to lead this process, but her presence was unavoidable. Justice does not pause for healing. Names became case files, lives became evidence. What had happened was translated into language cold enough to survive a courtroom. Arrests were made. For many, this would feel like closure. It did not. Legal proceedings demand recollection, details, timelines, accuracy. For a survivor, memory is not organized. It does not present itself neatly. It resists interrogation. Trauma fractures recall, blurs edges, protects itself through distortion. Yet the system asks anyway, to speak, to remember, to relive without falling apart. Alison did what was required, not because it was easy, but because it mattered. Sentences were passed, life imprisonment. The world called it justice, but justice does not erase pain.
Healing is not erasing memory, it is learning how to carry it without being crushed. There is a subtle expectation placed on survivors. Be grateful, be quiet, move on. But Alison refused to disappear into survival alone. She understood something vital. Silence protects no one. Her voice became a bridge between fear and understanding, between pain and purpose. She spoke not to shock, not to sensationalize, but to educate and empower. She reminded people that violence is not rare, and that prevention begins with awareness, not denial. Alison's work reached schools, conferences, communities. Her presence carried weight not because of what she endured, but because of how clearly she refused to let it define her limits. She did not present herself as fearless. She presented herself as honest. Honest about vulnerability, honest about the cost of healing, honest about the long road between trauma and peace. And that honesty saved lives, because it told others, you are not broken, you are not weak, you are not alone. Some stories end in tragedy. Others transform tragedy into warning, wisdom, and hope. Alison's story became a reminder that survival is not luck, it is resistance. That courage does not roar, it persists. That the human will, when anchored in purpose, can defy even the most brutal attempts to silence it. She showed the world that choosing life is not a single moment, it is a series of decisions. Every morning, every step forward, every refusal to let fear shrink the future. Because Alison Botha is not an exception, she represents countless voices that never get heard, stories that end too soon, lives altered quietly, without headlines or books. Her story forces uncomfortable truths into the light, that violence thrives in silence, that healing is not linear, that justice, while necessary, is not enough, and most importantly, that life can still be chosen even after everything tries to take it away. Years later, Alison's choice continues to echo. In classrooms where awareness replaces ignorance, in survivors who realize strength can exist alongside fear, in moments where someone decides to keep going because they know it's possible. She did not become a symbol by accident. She became one by refusing to surrender her future to her past. Alison Botha did not choose the darkness that found her, but she chose the light she walked toward.